Good afternoon, and I'm calling this meeting, the special meeting of the Judiciary and Licensing Committee to order. It's Thursday, June 20th, 2024, and we're at City Hall Plaza. Okay, the first thing we have on the agenda is citizen comments. However, as I notified you a little earlier, there have been some changes to the document, especially to the area that everybody is interested in today. And I'm going to ask our city clerk to read that to you and discuss just a little bit what it does. So I'll give the floor to you, and we will do the citizen comments immediately afterwards. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. As you mentioned before, there are some copies of the proposed changes to the ordinance sitting at the back table. So if anyone doesn't have one, please feel free to grab one. And I will go over the highlights of the changes. So in speaking with many food truck owners, citizens, throughout the course of the last week and a half or so, it was brought to our attention we clearly needed to make some changes to the updated policy that was adopted in May. So before you tonight, we have the newest staff recommendation on how we accommodate those changes that are hopefully a little bit more favorable to all parties involved. We hope this is a nice compromise. I have worked with Park and Recreation staff and worked with several of our food vendor partners, as well as with the city attorney, has done just a quick review early on. If the body moves forward with this tonight, we would clean it up and get this in ordinance form next Tuesday before the council with the official version, but you should expect it to look similar to this evening. So with that, with the changes we brought forward in May, the primary change to food trucks was you still have to have an annual $25 license meeting health department and fire code. That was not changed. The changes were enforcing rules that were actually already in place and not being enforced, which was no food trucks on public streets or public property. We thought we made the adequate accommodations to address the needs of events in the parks, and that clearly was not addressed well, and that's where you're going to see these changes addressed tonight. So the proposed plan is that we would continue on with the annual $25 food truck license, just as you're already seeing, still the same requirements, fire code, health department. Additionally, we have added a clause for events that occur in the parks. So if you look at section 5 of that ordinance, what we would be proposing is that any event organizer who rents park facilities would be allowed to invite food trucks to their event. Those food trucks would be asked to get an additional one-day event license at a nominal fee that would be set by this body. My recommendation is $5 to $10 per event. The purpose of that being so that we know that these events are approved and are permitted to be there, and the police department would have an easy check for who is allowed to be there, who is not. That is step one, is that you would have that event license. As far as the parks, we do have to have some restrictions on where food trucks are parked in the parks, just for safety and logistics of the parks. So under that 5D, you'll see that we are recommending for events held at Wenzel Plaza. Sorry, I skipped a little bit. Any event organizer who is renting the stage at Wenzel Plaza would be considered an event that could go ahead and invite food trucks. That rental is required to be having the food trucks there. And at that point, food trucks would be invited to park in the alleyway. We are still prohibiting food trucks on 2nd Street and Chestnut for safety reasons. For event organizers who are renting the stage at Columbia Park, we would allow you to have food trucks on the east side of Walnut Avenue between Arnold and Blodgett. Again, no food trucks on Arnold, Blodgett, or Chestnut because those are more traveled and those are heavy parked areas. That section of Walnut for Columbia Park events is primarily the only exception we're making to the street parking of food trucks. Again, a huge drive of this ordinance was the safety of pedestrians in the areas of the food trucks, and just the event parking and what that does to the areas. For Wildwood Plaza, any event organizer renting Wildwood Station Pavilion would again be able to invite food trucks. And then for any other parks not mentioned, they would also be able, as long as they are renting the park facility or shelter or whatever the case may be at that specific park, could invite food trucks to designated areas in those parking lots. So those are the primary changes that we are recommending. Again, we feel this is sort of a compromise. We're still prohibiting the street parking for various reasons, but we are giving a lot more options for food trucks at events and the parks. I think part of this was a misunderstanding on staff part, the staff on all levels, to understand the level of events, the number of events that were happening in our parks that were inviting food trucks. Because again, we have had policies prohibiting that. And so we didn't realize the extent of what those events were happening. So we were trying to find that balance now of inviting you and of allowing you. We obviously want the food trucks to be in the city of Marshfield. We want these events to happen. So that is the presentation that I'll have, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the public comments section of the meeting. I have a sheet here with the names on it. I'll start going down the list of this sheet. When I call your name, please come up to the podium, the rostrum, excuse me, up there, and give your name and your address before you begin your presentation. The first one I see on here, and I believe it's Ray LeBlanc.
Mic on. There we go.
You bet.
Working. My name is Ray LeBlanc, and I'm at 309 West 6th Street here in Marshfield. I'm coordinating an event at Columbia Park, and when I found out about this vendor issue, that I was going to be denied access to having vendors at our event, this is what stirred this meeting, and I appreciate Brian, because I asked him for a special meeting to resolve this issue as soon as possible, because there's a lot at stake. And with you guys, I appreciate you're on top of it. You made this important meeting to happen, and you've already made some recommendation changes. One of them that I would like to see on there is to either clarify or strike the city-sanctioned clause. And what does that really mean? When I rent the park, isn't the city already authorizing me? So when that be considered, the language is a little fuzzy there. I think when I was talking to the city clerk, Jessica, at the last week, I was informed that my event is not city sanctioned. Therefore, if I invited a vendor truck to our event, that they would be fined and possibly lose their license or suspended their license. So that really got a few people's eyebrows raised when that issue was brought forth. I was totally unaware of it. Most of the vendors here, I'm sure, were unaware of it. I don't recall any special meeting or a meeting talking about this, but this thing was brought up in May, I believe, right? So a couple other things. I had written an open letter. I'm not going to bother reading it because it's already been addressed, what we're doing right now. But, you know, the extra cost, too, for every time they have an event. Well, when an event's taking place, like when I rented Columbia Park, I paid a fee. Wouldn't it be better when I'm asking to rent the park for a day or for an event, and I'm paying a fee, that all that should be covered then? Do you need a vendor at your event? Is there going to be a vendor there? Yes or no? What is your event all about? You're approving it right there on the spot. Why is it necessary to ask for additional funding, additional licensing, additional fees? I think that could be addressed at the point when somebody's asking to rent a facility and have that all taken care of in one shot. Other than that, I think that's about all I had to say on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. The next one I have up is Bruce Weiner. Is that correct? Bruce?
I'm going to have to agree with him pretty much.
Name and address, please.
Name and address.
Excuse me?
Name and address for the record, please.
Bruce Weiner, 8598 Heritage Drive, Marshfield. The changes all look good. The only issue I had is with the extra $5 or $10 permit. At the time somebody rents that property, it's already in your regulations that you have to post a written letter from the persons whose property you're on. At that point, why can't you just get a letter from the city that you can put on up like you would if you were in Weyerhaeuser's parking lot? And then that way, if the police or whoever are going over all this, they could say, oh, okay, you have permission to be here, instead of an extra permit. We're working on pretty small basis here, so that's all I got.
Thank you. Next up is Dottie Schnitzler. Dottie, I think you know the routine, I believe. Yep, you know where to find it.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to hear what you all said before this, that you're working with the people. That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. My name is Dorothy Schnitzler, 709 South Cherry, Marshfield, Wisconsin. And this is what I was going to say, okay? I hope you can smile. If my mother was here, she would say, what in the world is going on? And then I said to her, is this true that some vendors did not follow protocol and angered some store owners? I don't know the whole story. That warrants a lockdown on all vendors that have not caused anybody to be angry. And that there will be vendors allowed only on June Dairy Fest and Hub City Days. Is that true? Now, if it wasn't mentioned to write a check on this law, would have that meant that these vendors that did not know would be shut down and fined? And the families for attending a fun day that was well planned to offer for the first time in Marshfield a time for families and children to experience all the fun things that are planned on Saturday, June 29th at the Columbia Park. I suggest that this is changing, and I'm glad to hear that, so that these events continue with having food and refreshments for the family on this day, Saturday, June 29th at Columbia Park, instead of fun days with no food. I'm glad that this is happening, and I'm glad there's a compromise, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dorothy. Next up is Katrina Copeland. That's correct.
Hi, I'm Katrina Copeland. I own Cat Sweet Escape, 1414 South Hemlock. And I did have a completely different speech planned, but in the light of a lot of discussions in the last day or two, I guess I can change that up a little bit. And I do appreciate everybody's discussions, and we have a lot to go through. Sorry, just trying to collect my words and try to think of what to say, but for like the $5 to $10, I do agree with a lot of that said, that I think that can be absorbed in when there is an application for renting, that it can be maybe put onto the person that is renting. Are you applying for a vendor that each person doesn't have to pay $5 to $10 for the same exact space? If they're renting, having maybe 3 or 4 food vendors, why does, maybe $30 have to be paid per se? As far as the streets go, I think that food truck that is in question, that was 2 years ago, and no food truck has been on the streets ever since. And there's enough room for everybody to succeed. And the food trucks and the food vendors want everybody to succeed. And I think the other people and the other small business owners in this community also agree. We want everybody to succeed. And that is the whole point of small business owners, is that there's enough room for everybody. And so I do appreciate the council and the committees listening to us and having room to grow and having us park at Wenzel Plaza, at Wildwood, and that we can still do events, because that is super important to us to be able to serve the community and have days that aren't just Hub City, that aren't just Dairy Fest, that aren't just Maple Fun Fest, that Maple Fall Fest. That we can do other things. We can do graduations, we can do Pride, we can do the events like they're having for the family fun days and everything like that. So I do appreciate that, and hopefully we can have smooth sailing and get this voted through very quickly so everybody can have their events in the next week or so, mine included.
Thank you. Next up is Brandon Taylor.
So my name is Brandon with KLM Entertainment. Our address is 219 West 26th Street, Marshfield. You guys have addressed some of our concerns, which we appreciate you guys being able to be flexible and work with us. But so we started our community events about 7 years ago, and we've seen that there was a need for like youth-based events, which is why we're trying to grow our event to include food trucks for this year. This year we are scheduled to rent out Hackman Field, and we paid the full for the full field, and we like to utilize food trucks inside that parking lot space. When I first talked to Jessica, she said that our event would have to be sanctioned by the city. She told me the only people that are able to be sanctioned is events through Main Street Marshfield or Mackey. Obviously, our event is self-funded by local businesses, and we don't feel it's justified to say that just because we're not Mackey or Main Street, that we can't sanction a community-based event that is safe for everyone to attend. And then we're also hoping to be able to create other events, such as like utilizing the Van de Hey waters for our free swim for this coming year or maybe next year due to timing. We advise that if you have not reviewed over the Parks and Rec Forestry meeting, that we strongly encourage our community members to watch that video from the YouTube channel to show what we were requesting from Parks and Rec directly for utilizing Van de Hey waters. I believe this is everything I want to say. Considering you guys changed a lot, we do appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I think, is Jay Harwood.
Good evening, Jay Harwood, 613 West 5th Street, Razor J's Old Fashioned Kettle Corn. A couple questions that I had on here when it talks on section 2 about the authority of the city. What I want to know is who has the authority of the city? Is that city clerk? Is that the police department? Is that Justin from Parks and Rec or the directors of events at the zoo? I mean, there could be a lot of people that say, oh yes, you're here, but what if we're wrong? And I was invited, and all of a sudden, I didn't have the correct authority. I'd like to see that clarified. Also, there's some other events such as softball games, soccer games, and we provided food for them. I know that baseball tournaments, I've been invited over at Hackman. I don't see that here unless I'm missing it in the new revisions. What about movies in the park? the Armory, when there's events there, do those people, will they fill out the paperwork to apply for a food truck? And if so, then that's something that they could do before they even invite us. That way it's all taken care of. That'd be my recommendation. And then some of the, no food vendors shall operate in a public park. We kind of talked about that, which is good. But what about things like gatherings? What if there's a gathering for a class reunion or something like that at one of the shelters? That's that's just there. Are we not allowed to park on the street for that? What if it's something last minute? Let's say one of my colleagues falls ill and asks me if I can do it, and it's a Friday afternoon. Will we miss out? Will the client miss out because somebody didn't get the paperwork in time for things like this? I mean, these are things we could talk about. These are ideas we have, like maybe some of us that have been here doing this a long time, we can pay so much a year and have a certain amount of the events that we know we're going to do or that are continuous every year listed, plus maybe just consideration for things that do come up from time to time, just for the sake of the paperwork. And in Part C, the all food vendors shall operate exclusively on private property. I think that's missing here from the second one, but it says written permission of the property owner. I'd like to see that include written permission or verbal permission of a representative. Like, how are you going to track down somebody who's a corporation of a bank? Who's the owner? Who owns, Marshfield Clinic parking lot? These are type of things that, like I said, I didn't know if I saw that in the second part, but I'd like to at least mention it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, and forgive me if I've got this wrong, is it Byron Ruin, R-U-U-N?
What's the address?
The address is 8611 State Highway 80. I'm sorry I couldn't read the handwriting. I apologize.
Third grade handwriting. Hello, I'm Brian Rank, owner and operator of Cambray's Mobile Restaurant in Marshfield, 8611 State Highway 80. I have a lot of concerns about this. You stated that the main concern for adopting some of this stuff was safety concerns, but merely by throwing a $10 or $5 fee at it, the safety concerns magically disappear. That's an issue for me. We already pay fees to be a part of Dairy Fest, Hub City Days, Maple Fall Fest. I don't know if other Main Street businesses pay additional fees when events go on in town. On top of this, when more business is brought into town, i.e. they're gonna make money, so the city wants to make money. But to do this at a business where we make hundreds of dollars a day, not thousands of dollars a day, you're beating a dead horse. Everybody wants fees. When we go to some events, people want 10% here. They want 5% there. We're a restaurant business where 30% of my costs go to overhead and cost of goods. Then I have to pay people. Then people want 10%. Then I got to pay my fees and stuff. Then at the end of the day, I got to go home and probably get another job because my hobby job now just isn't cutting it because everybody wants their hands in the pot of this $100 business that we have. We're not out here making millions of dollars. Like I said, as business owners, we're out here making hundreds of dollars. I don't know why this had to be adopted. I don't know the backstory of some phantom truck parking somewhere or somebody. I don't know. I don't know the backstory. Me and my wife as business owners have yet to be contacted from anybody about the city about this. We got the updates of the policies in May. I got home from an event at 11:30 last night and found out that this was going on with no emails from anybody from the city. So I had to cancel events today to try to make things work. So when I hear that you say you're talking and working with a lot of people, I don't know who those people are because it sure isn't me as a business owner in the city of Marshfield. There's only a handful of food trucks that operate in the city of Marshfield, and you could get us all the information in an email for this stuff, but you couldn't get it to us for this emergency meeting. It causes concerns for me. Jay had a lot of great points. You know, the written permission thing too, that's silly. Marshfield Clinic holds an event when I gotta track down somebody to get written permission for something. If I'm not supposed to be there, odds are the business owner is gonna call you and tell you I need to leave, or they're gonna tell me. I don't know that that's ever been an issue, truthfully. I think 99.9% of the food trucks in this town operate things the right way. We do things by the book, and we do it with a smile every day. We get health inspections up the wazoo from every event we're at, where every other 9 to 5 business gets it once a year. Fire department, health department. We deal with this stuff all the time, and we do it with a smile because it's part of doing business. What you could do, what I recommend as well, is you're already getting fees from people renting these places out. To add more fees on for us just seems absurd. These people are already doing this. Like Jay stated, if I get sick and I need Kat to fill in, or I need Jay to fill in, now he's got to jump through hoops and try to get okay. And oh crap, they closed at 5 or they closed at 4 and I couldn't get in there in time. And now you guys are just SOL and you can't have food at your event. It's just absurd. This is stuff that should be taken care of ahead of time. When these people are doing these events, we do things at the Wildwood Station. People do employee parties and stuff like that and want us to bring the food truck down and park in the lot there and cook for that in the middle of the fall. There's nobody there. There's nothing going on. It's the middle of the night, but they rented the space out. Now I got to pay a $10 fee because of safety concerns is what I'm told. The $10 fee is not going to make safety better, and it's not going to help anybody. I mean, that's not the solution. If you do want to add that $5 fee on, hey, are you having a vendor at your event? Check that box, $5. That seems like the fair option. But to throw it on to us people that are just trying to get by, we're trying to make a buck. We're not these big corporations making tons of money. Again, just to reiterate, it's just it's a beating a dead horse with these fees and this and that. We pay a $25 food license fee in the city of Marshfield, which I thought covered us to sell food in the city of Marshfield. I don't know why another fee makes it even more okay for us to sell it, because it's not required by any other businesses or any other events in town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. That's the end of the list that we had of the people who signed in beforehand. There were some people who arrived after we started. Are there any other persons who would like to be heard? Yes, sir. Can you come to the microphone and give your name and address?
Hi, my name is Nat Bremer. I live at 1027 Chapel Street. Most of you know me. I've ate at all the food trucks, all of them. I'm working on it, guys. So the thing I would like to state is a lot of the events that we go to, for example, Uptown Coffee, they've got a location. They asked Stone Press to come and set up in the morning, beignets, baguettes. My kids make me get up at 5 a.m. just to go there, to be the first in line so we don't have to wait forever. And then while we're there, we go into Uptown Coffee, right? We are using the food trucks as ways to promote other businesses as well. They team together, they work together. When I saw this, I said, that is ridiculous. Now, I know you guys are taking some action, and I thank you for that. But one of the concerns would be parking on the street. Well, at Uptown Coffee, there's nowhere to park but on the street. There was no safety issues. People parked, they walked up to the place, they parked, and then they got back in their cars and they left. They didn't sit around and eat. Nobody got hurt. That's just one example. The last 2 years, I ran an event at the Armory. It was a music swap. Sold vinyl records and had a bunch of vendors come in from Appleton, Green Bay, Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls. We had them come from everywhere. We had people sleeping in hotels the night before because of this event. We had Razor J come and actually set up his truck outside. It was a last minute thing. I talked to Jay and said, hey, Jay, will you set up? He said, absolutely, I'd love to. What I propose is that if you want to fee the food trucks, okay, give them a $20 fee at the beginning of the year, or $25 or whatever it is, but then have a sticker on their truck So if the concern is somebody from the outside coming with a food truck, if a police officer doesn't see the sticker that's registered with the city of Marshfield, then fines will ensue. But it's a lot easier just to have them get the sticker up front for the year. If you go to national parks, you've got park passes, right? So they can see what your park pass is, but if you don't have the park pass, they give you a fine. Same thing for the city of Marshfield. If they don't have their vendor sticker registered to their truck visible, right, then fines ensue. I get the public safety of you don't want them to park on the street, but to say you can't be at any event, a lot of us strive on that. If I want to have a graduation party for my daughter who graduates next year and I want Cambrai to come in and do my food event, do they have to park in my driveway? When I have to get a tent and I have to get everything else. I live at 1027 Chapel, slanted hill, not a lot of parking. But now I'm going to take it up with the food truck because it needs to be on my property, not on the street. If you guys want to address safety hazards, all day long there's hazards. The estate sales. I went to an estate sale on my street the other day. I couldn't get one car through because people park so close to each other. There was nobody there to say, this is a safety hazard. So should we shut down estate sales and make them have fines? I'm just giving you examples that you start finding people for doing their jobs. These are businesses. Now, I know Stone Press can't be here tonight because that was the first call I made. I talked to Denny from Zippy's and I talked to Stone Press right away. I picked up the phone and said, what is this all about? You can see a lot of people here because they're concerned. Food is what brings people together. Everything they're doing is all about community. And you're kind of stripping it away. And I understand that you have a job. And we appreciate that you brought this forward. But sometimes if it gets buried, this is what happens. So I thank you for addressing it, but I think you really need to look deeper and go, is it about the money? Or is it about other people saying, we really need to get these food trucks out of here? I don't know what it's about. I don't know where it stems from. And I know you guys probably put in lots of hours. You do your 9 to 5s and then you come here, right? But it's important that we don't take away the small businesses or drive them out of Marshfield because it's part of what makes Marshfield. I followed some of these trucks to other events in Stevens Point and in Wausau. And when I go there, I don't go to the other food trucks. I go to the local ones that these guys are because I know their food's amazing. And I really appreciate them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll ask one more time. Was there anybody here that didn't get a chance to sign in but would still like to speak? There's nobody there? Okay, we'll close that portion of the meeting and we will open up for discussion regarding potential changes to the Marshfield Municipal Code 9-56, mobile phone food vendors. Would you like to start off based on what you've heard, or should we go with the council first?
I guess I would prefer your questions.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Barshow?
You can go ahead
Ms.
first.
Ms.
All right, I'll start things off here because there was a lot of things brought up, and so I kind of want to, hopefully I hit all of them. I try to keep some notes. The first one is, and I think that we need to address, is under number 2, definition, authority of the city. Somebody asked, who is this? Do we have a definition of authority of the city?
When the city attorney and I wrote this in the first draft, it was this body, that ultimately any concerns would come back to this licensing body.
Okay, so the Judiciary Licensing Committee is who they would be referring to in this particular situation. Okay, so then we went on to 5B, the redlined version, the permission of the property owner. Is there a possibility? Okay, so let me read it totally. All mobile food vendors shall operate on private property with the permission of the property owner. Written permission from the property owner shall be located in the mobile food vending vehicle at all times. So I understand in bigger events, like you said, the Marshfield Clinic, who owns the Marshfield Clinic? How do you know that? Jessica, is there a possibility that this wording could be a little more extensive? And is the written permission something that's required by law? Because some of this is required by law, I want to say that. There were a lot of comments made, and there are things that are absolutely required by law that we do. That's why you're going to see me reference Jessica a couple times on my questions, because I'm not 100% sure of the answers.
So we can absolutely change this to be owner/manager to give a little more flexibility. I know people who have asked, I've said, if you go to the customer service desk at Festival and get a letter from the manager on duty saying, they know you're there, you have permission to be there, that's completely acceptable, because again, we know some of these corporations are hard to have. So that part of it, as far as is this part dictated by law, again, the laws for us on administering food truck licensure is virtually non-existent right now. We are working with other municipalities and other areas to try to figure out how do we address this and how do we get some consistency among the somewhat local region. What we have found through this process is when we started this process in 2022, every municipality I've been working with has also changed their food licensing procedures since that time. So it's very fluid. So some of the information we had vetted already at that time has also changed or is changing.
So if I can follow up, so can we talk about what the benefit is of having the written permission from the owner and having it posted on your cart or your vehicle?
This stemmed actually from the conversation at Plan Commission last year when the zoning was addressed for farmers market specifically. And it was brought up to the concern that some of the organizations having the farmers markets, they allow people in, but they weren't necessarily doing any further check as to is that vendor licensed? Who are they? Where are they coming from? And it was the recommendation coming out of that discussion that we add this written permission as a way for business owners to understand there are further licensures required, making sure that if a business invites a food truck to their parking lot, they are aware there are other conditions.
Okay. Okay, and the reason, again, I just want to say the reason I'm kind of doing it this way is so we can kind of hear if there's a particular reason for the way we wrote these. So if we went back up, Hackman Field was brought up a couple of times, and we did not list particularly, we did not go through and list Hackman Field under the D section 3. Can we talk about Hackman Field? I do think there are a lot of events there, especially some of the bigger tournaments and things like that. So is there an issue with us adding Hackman Field to that list and putting it in their parking lot?
So number 4 under that on the back section, designated parking spots in the parking lot of other city parks when the event organizer is renting the facility or shelter. We felt, as myself and Park and Rec staff, that was the way to encompass most of the parks that are in a very similar situation where they have a designated parking lot where an event organizer can absolutely designate a portion of that parking for the weekend for those. The reason we called out Wenzel, Columbia, and Wildwood was because we just felt those fell in a little bit different distinction. Wenzel, you have the alleyway for the parking, so that's sort of just a convenient way. Columbia Park being that exception with that street parking being allowable. In Wildwood, it was really important to the Park and Rec staff that we tie that to the rental of the Wildwood Station Pavilion, the main pavilion, because they do not want to see the food trucks just because somebody rents a $30 open air pavilion, because then we do have concerns with, not because our vendors are going to do that, but are people going to go onto the grass? Are we going to have them on the street where that 17th Street is already a safety issue?
Gotcha. So someplace like Hackman Field or the old Armory, they both have parking lots. That would fall then under number 4, correct. Designated parking spots.
Yes, correct.
Okay, good. Okay, so that one's addressed. So let's see, define city sanctioned. I think that's something that we probably can talk about. And then the last thing is the idea of the additional $5 to $10 per event license and lots of thoughts on that. Could it be all inclusive when people are renting the park? Could it be that they pay a $25 annual license fee and possibly also purchase additional special event tags at that time? Or what is the reason? I don't think I didn't take it as the additional $5 to $10 per license was a safety thing, more as a knowing what's happening, knowing who's out there.
Correct.
So can you explain that
Right.
just a little
So
bit?
in the conversations with Park and Recreation on how would we have some sort of management and oversight, a really good example, Main Street, when they have Hub City Days, Mackey with Dairy Fest, the Central Wisconsin State Fairgrounds, when we have the fair, we get a list of vendors for those from those organizations in advance, so we can go through and make sure all vendors are registered and licensed, and that they are lining up their fire inspection with the fire department. So we have sort of that streamlined process. So it became, how do we address the more one-off events that are frequent, but how do we address those? We considered, do we increase the park fee and add this into the park and recreation rental fee? Okay, we are anticipating 5 food trucks, and so we're gonna pay for 5 additional spaces for food trucks. The concern that we had was park and recreation staff are not the experts of food truck licensing and the requirements of a food truck. And we did kind of toss around the idea we could increase the fee for the annual food license from $25 to maybe $50 or $75 or $100. The problem is that some of the vendors do come in and they only are operating on private property, or they are only at these, I'm still going to use the city sanctioned events, Dairy Fest, Hub City Days, the fair, Maple Fall Fest. So we were trying to find a balance that was a user fee for those who were actually participating in those events. That's clearly the discretion of this body. That was the recommendation of staff on how we could find a balance.
Yeah, so basically you're saying the user fee is more about understanding who's where and being able to make sure that, okay. So, when we talk about the food trucks, and you all know this because you own them, there's laws, there's certain laws you mentioned, that you have to go under, you have to have these safety inspections and things like that. So I think part of knowing when a food truck is operating is related to not safety in the streets, whether some little kid's going to cross in front of traffic, but safety as if, have you been licensed, have you been inspected, that kind of thing. But I think that can be, explored a little bit too. And then I think the last issue, I think that we need to take there's 2 separate things here. The gentleman came up and they talked about the free community swims at Vanda Hay, and the movie in the zoo, I think, is slightly separate issue. I don't want to say that we're not talking about that, but I just want to bring that up separately. And so I think the last thing I wrote down from what people were saying was private property events. So is the expectation if somebody has a graduation party and they have a food truck come, is the expectation for that food truck to have to park in their driveway at this point?
Yes, that's correct. That is direction of fire department and emergency services.
Okay. So, all right. Is there any possibility that there could ever be waivers, or how would we do that if there was a waiver?
I think those would have to come to this body as a case-by-case basis, as well as Public Works. Public Works is in the process of developing a street use permit that's a little bit more streamlined. So that could possibly be something that would go through both you and Public Works.
Okay. So maybe that's something that we think of, because I do think that there are people who have private events and they don't have much driveway space. And, hopefully they know in advance that they want to have an event, and they can maybe we can look at some sort of a waiver system that would involve, like you said, the police and, a couple other And hopefully that would be a good compromise. Because I do know, I mean, people like to have private events and, we do want to support these mobile food vendors, and we want to, of course, promote local business and make them as successful as possible. So I think that that's something that maybe we should talk about is some sort of a waiver for private events, where they would be able to say what it was, when it was, and then that could be reviewed. I think that's all I have right now. I don't think I answered many questions, but just the things that we probably need to address or talk about.
Mr. Varsho, would you like the floor?
A lot of everything has been talked about and discussed that I had on here, and obviously there's more discussion. Whoever organizes Hub City Days, Dairy Fest and stuff, they fill out the paperwork and it gets sent here. Does it go to Park and Recs and get sent here?
Both.
They have a list of their vendors. So I would think that if anybody rents out those places, they just put a list of what vendors they're gonna have and send that over so that we know what vendors are gonna be at that event. I really don't think that there should be any nominal fee for it. They pay to have their licensing. They have to get fire inspected every time they go somewhere. It's just, if they rent the facility, Mr. Labarge, correct? He's renting a place. He filled out that Parks and Rec app. He could have put on there, Cambrai is gonna be there. Razor J is gonna be there. Put that on the app. The Parks and Rec people send it over to Jessica so she knows that they are registered and they're within the city guidelines that we have here. They have an annual pass. We go for it. If they don't, then it's going to be a little bit different. Then we say, hey, they don't have anything here. They're going to have to come and they're going to have to go through everything to get a license here. But I think we just fix that Parks and Rec form to make sure they can list everything on, just as if Dairy Fest does or Hub City Days does, or I would assume the fairground did a couple years ago during COVID when they had the fair event and they had, I don't know, half a dozen trucks there. Maple Fall Fest is wonderful. They have a whole bunch of them there. I think that we can do this simple enough with adjusting that form. As for everything else, obviously, private property is one thing. You have, what do we have here? Chick-fil-A was over at Gross Motors twice the last 2 or 3 months. That was private property. You have a graduation party. Understand when it's in town, it's hard, but as Mr. Bremer said, when you have an estate sale, there's people parked on both sides of the road, you can barely get through, and it is difficult. But when you have a private party and you want to have a food truck, it's probably something you're going to have to, keep in your driveway, in your front yard or something like that, because we want, and the estate sales are something we probably should look into further. But other than that, I really think that we've touched on pretty much a lot of the things that we wanted to discuss here. We do have to finalize this because it starts July 1st.
So actually, my hope tonight is that I can have a solid recommendation from this committee so I can finalize the ordinance to draft for the council meeting next week, where we can present the ordinance, request a suspension of the second reading so it can be valid on Wednesday. So next weekend's events can occur with food trucks.
With the food trucks there. Okay.
So I would like to have some really solid direction from this committee tonight on where you want to see this so I can get that drafted and in the packet tomorrow.
I think their annual license is sufficient enough. I think we have to get the Parks and Rec, we have to get the application for the Parks and Rec to have them list if they're going to have mobile food trucks there. Just list them there so it comes to the city clerk so that we know what food trucks are there and know that their annual license are up to date. And as for their fire inspections, that happens every time they go to every event? No, once or twice a year, 3 times?
Like annually?
Yeah. Yeah, I was on the fair board for a while. I know all the vendors that come in and have to have fire. Yeah, that was, other than that, if the parking lots for the fairgrounds, Hackman Field, if that's covered in section 4 there, I think that besides, I think everything else on here is pretty good.
I think if we can kind of interact, because this is a lot to try to get done in a few minutes.
Right.
If we can go ahead and put B, if we can put, instead of permission of property owner, we can reword that to some designee. Again, yep, drop the event license extra fee, we don't need that in there. Authority of the city up in line 2 should probably be defined as the Judiciary Licensing Committee. And like you said, Hackman Field and things like that, and the Armory, those are included under number 4. And let's see, I still would like to add something that if there is a private event, there is a possibility of filling out a waiver, but that would have to be done in advance and would have to be at the, that would have to be approved, based on recommendations from the police department, the plan commission, and the judiciary licensing. And I think that sort of covered most everything that people brought up.
Okay.
I hope.
So then with, let's say everything goes okay, everything goes well, which we're thinking it's going to, next Tuesday it passes. Are the 2 events that are scheduled for next weekend then under the responsibility to at least get a list to you the next day, Wednesday, saying, okay, these food trucks are going to be here. Just want to let you know, just so we know which ones will be there.
Right.
Okay.
So people organizing the Pride event and the people organizing the family community event, get your list of vendors to Jessica as quick as you can.
Yeah.
That way we're good with that too.
Let's move forward to that.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Those would be the changes that I would propose. And do we need a motion? So, Ed, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask the same question. Do you need a motion on that, or do you have enough to rewrite the ordinance and present it as it presents the changes at the next meeting?
I have the ideas. I would like to have a motion that would recommend that the proposed ordinance, as the changes have been discussed, and that you direct me to prepare that ordinance and present it to the council on Tuesday, June 25th.
So moved.
Rebecca,
So moved.
Second by Varsho. More discussion. The only thing I wanted to add to this, and I managed to keep myself out of it, most of it, but the only thing I would like to see is the effort, as you're doing implementing the things that Rebecca and Varsho have talked about, try and keep in mind, make this as close to one-stop shopping as you can. Make it so it encourages rather than discourages the event. That's the only thing I would like to add.
You guys will have a draft of this tonight before I leave City Hall.
So you're going to be busy tonight. Okay, all right. Yeah, the sooner the draft gets to us, the better. So that's a good deal. Is there any other information that you need? And I'm sorry, we're past that point.
We have
Did
to
we
vote.
vote?
No.
But
We need to vote.
We need to vote.
we need to vote. So we got a first and a second. No more discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. With that, I think.
Wait.
What?
Future agenda.
Go ahead. What did we miss?
Oh, no, I just wanted to, like I said, I thought that we did have some speakers here tonight about the free community swim at Band of Hay Waters and the movie In the Zoo. I don't think that we can address that here tonight. We only have 5 minutes left of this meeting, but I would say that.
Noticed.
What was that?
And it's not noticed.
And it's not noticed. So I would say that I would like to see that on the next meeting.
Okay, so that's item for next agenda, right, okay. All right, and that being the case, I'll understand a motion from Varsho to
Yes.
adjourn, a second by Spiros.
Yes.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.